What's a job that most people wouldn't know actually exists? I'm a prop shopper for a popular TV show. Basically I show up to work. The designer will tell me that the show needs a specific prop for the taping and it's my job to go buy or rent it. It's a fun job because they ask you to get ridiculous stuff sometimes and it's a challenge to find it. My dad used to shoot wildlife, mainly birds, that would wander on airport runways. He was replaced with a falcon. Food expert witness. Some guy gets paid around $300 an hour to explain food to a jury. I was really shocked to learn that it wasn't Anthony Bourdain. When companies have paperwork that they want to make digital, the documents need to be scanned. Before this can happen, someone needs to go through all of the documents and remove every single staple. And that's how I spent my summers while I was in college. I actually liked it quite a bit though. When certain highly expensive pieces of jewelry are sold to buyers in different countries, say a $300 000 watch, for example. Oftentimes the company selling the watch will send someone to wear it on the plane over to said buyer country, since to import it would cost them a lot in taxes. But to pay for someone to wear it as their own watch costs significantly less. I met a professional alpaca shaver when I was on holiday last month. He told me he gets about $35 per shaved alpaca. Fun fact. Alpacas make a cute humming sound and only poop in certain areas in an effort to stay clean. I once met a woman from China at the airport in Frankfurt while waiting for my plane. When I asked her what her plans in Europe were, she told me she is a personal shopper. Apparently many companies won't ship to a lot of places in China and the people there don't trust that the local shops actually sell the original products and instead sell knockoffs of name brand fashion merchandise. Additionally, Chinese men often won't let their wives travel without them. So the wives can't go shop for themselves. Instead they hire someone else to travel to places like Paris, New York or California and give them a list of dresses, purses, etc. that they want. Sounded like an awesome job to me. Get paid to travel and shop. She said she made decent money too, and that often her customers would pay for her to buy things for herself on top of that as a tip. London Underground employs people to walk along their lines above ground and look for building sites they haven't been told about. Anyone building anything nearby is supposed to consult them at the planning stage. But sometimes these things slip through and it's better to catch it at that stage rather than have someone drill into a line. Makes sense when you think about it. But not a job I'd ever thought of. Not sure whether it's one person's full-time job or a shift that people rotate through. My father is an architect. He employs someone whose entire job is to straighten his lines. Edit. I get it. It's whose. Sorry shit happens. Trucking companies employ people whose job it is to recover abandoned trucks and cargo. Apparently truckers will just be like fuck it and leave their trucks and trailers on the side of a road. These companies pay pretty well and you are on call 24/7. But they fly you all over the country to retrieve their stuff and pay well. Sounds kinda neat really. Edit. Should be whose and not whose. I need a scapegoat so I'm blaming my phone. It definitely wasn't my inability to pay attention to my own writing while using mobile. Sorry guys. I suck. Once got paid for a month of 40-hour work weeks for sitting at a gate and watching to make sure no cows got out. I was a bovine identification and exit prevention specialist. Never saw a f***ing cow. Read some good books, though. There are guys on call 24/7 to pick up organs from a donor at the hospital and drive it to the airport. I know a guy who did this for years and made bank. He had a specialist to show to police if he was caught speeding. The thing that drove him to quit was a work friend of his who didn't keep it quiet. The friend told everyone about his cool job and cooler of kindness and such. He nearly got killed when someone robbed him for the organs. Not long after that happened, my guy had a flight cancel and he had to take a cooler with a heart back to his house. Not long after that he decided it wasn't worth the risk to his family. It's cheaper to have one person digitally paint over and remove a boner in post than it is to hold production on a film set. Some people call it scrotoscoping. There was a strip club with a pawn shop and private viewing booths near my work. We had a delivery nearby, and one of our drivers would stop about 5 AM in their parking lot and take smoke breaks. Or so he said. Apparently one day he got there a little earlier than normal, and there was a girl driving around the parking lot picking up used condoms. And that was her job. Every night, she would be on cleaning detail at the club. And about 3 AM she'd go outside to pick up the used condoms in the parking lot for an hour. Our driver talked to her and she said it was pretty disgusting. But she was just trying to pay the bills. So that girl's job became known as the worst job in the world. Whenever people got really down about working for our company, it was always nice to have that story to throw out there. It was an immediate morale booster. It's not really a normal job, but my entire job responsibility is to change light bulbs around campus. A normal shift for me involves driving out to 2 or 3 buildings and replacing all the light bulbs in the building, whether they are burnt out or not. I do it on a rotating 6-month schedule. I'm also on call if there are any light bulbs reported as burned out. I don't fix broken ballasts or sockets. That job belongs to someone else. I only replace bulbs. Edit. It's primarily fluorescent tubes, though we still do have some incandescent bulbs in a few areas. The unburned bulbs, and all bulbs, are properly disposed of. I just package them in big barrels and send them to our hazardous waste department. You'd be surprised at just how many of these bulbs are nearing the end of their lifespan after 6 months. While it is wasteful, it's important for the university to maintain appearances. Important enough to swallow that cost, I guess. Cantor. It's the person at a church, or other place where there is singing, who stands in the front and makes hand motions to help people know when to sing a higher or lower note. They're there to help people who can't read music, or to assist those like me who can read music but are a little rusty. The act of being a cantor is called canting. You have to be able to cant to be a cantor. You can't cant if you can't cant. Underwear cockroach inspector. Guy or gal in a factory, inspecting garments for insects before they get shipped out to the retailers. It's a thing. A friend of mine's grandfather worked as a parachute tester in World War I. Back before technology and safety regulations were a thing. Edit. I just did some googling. And amazingly, the US Army still employs test jumpers today. I was honestly shocked to learn that people stream video games and make a decent living off of it. I understand winning competitive tournaments. Sure. But just like playing games and having people give you money because they want to watch you play games was a foreign concept to me. There's a job called Hand Angel, and their job is to give hand jobs to people with disabilities. Note that this is completely different from prostitution. Edit. Was on vacation for a whole month and realized my comment blew up. What I meant by this is completely different from prostitution is that in some parts of the world it is covered in the medical care and in the wellness program. I'm not an expert in this field, I just saw something on TV once. But the reasoning behind it is about sexual frustration and mental well-being. The major difference between this and prostitution is that most people are capable, while may not be as satisfying, to take care of their sexual needs. While it is not an option for those with disability, at least some. I'm not a hand angle myself, but I'm sure if you do a AMA with one they can explain it better than I can. There's also a quote on how many times they can receive this service like all other medical benefits. I believe there's also a NGO that does it in parts of Asia. If you don't believe me, try Google. Facade engineer. I rappel abseil down the outside of 40+ story buildings to inspect them for problems. I make sure bits don't fall off, work out why buildings are leaking and set up schedules for repairs. I think my job is fairly interesting and fairly obscure. Ever have a dentist put a crown or bridge in your mouth? Ever wonder where they come from? He doesn't make them. They're custom made by a dental laboratory. I'm a dental lab technician who does a myriad of tasks. I work at an institutional review board, better known as an IB. Most vague job description ever. I review paperwork to support human research studies. Had no idea these places existed when I applied. Was hired as a blank slate and been here 5 years now. In Japan, my wife got a job as designated foreigner at weddings. Apparently they like the idea of foreigners at their weddings as it makes the photos more interesting. She used to earn up to 20 yen a day. Also met a Canadian guy there who had a job as designated foreigner at bar. He used to get pissed and make conversation with salarymen. I was talking to a dad in my scout troop a few years back who said that one summer while he was in college he got hired by the government to drive along freeways and verify that mile markers were accurate. They paid for his gas and lodging. So he basically just road tripped with 2 of his friends for the whole summer and earned a profit. Worked in a warehouse that distributed soda. Fill in the company name as you will. There was a guy on hire whose only job 8 hours per day was to dump expired soda down the drain. Apparently they can't legally sell it or give it away. My dad does credentialing for a large hospital network. Essentially, he makes sure that doctors are actually doctors. A lot of his job is contacting schools and other hospitals to confirm that a new hire actually studied or had residence there. I used to have a summer job extinguishing welders. When they cut into a pipeline that, unexpectedly, contained fuel oil under pressure, I'd extinguish the welder while he screamed and rolled around and generally made my job more difficult. Then I'd get the rest of the day off while he drank. There are at least 100 people in my office who doctors contract to verify your insurance benefits so the doctor's office staff doesn't have to. Essentially we call your insurance company. Ask them if the medication procedure you need is covered and how much it'll cost. And then we send a report to your doctor's office. People get paid $10 to watch a film or show on Netflix. As part of Operation Beetlejuice, the juicers tag the shows with things like sci-fi, strong female lead etc. and choose screenshots for stills. They're currently trying to sue Netflix for holiday time, healthcare 401k, etc. So there could be vacancies coming up. I work as a seeder. Promotional prizes for cereal and other food items are called seeds. My job is making sure one seed is in every shipment to the store. I basically just stand around while everyone else packs crates and then swap one box for the seed. It's really easy and I get paid way too much, $35 per hour. Late. So no one will see this. But I do safety, security and content moderation for an online children's game. Most people seem surprised that it's a thing. I basically read lines of chat from our game all day long and punish kids for breaking rules and adjust the filters to prevent them from being able to break rules in the first place. Commercial scheduler. Not like with the Super Bowl. When I'm sure the companies negotiate with the network to get the spot they want. But late night. Local broadcast ads for car dealerships and things like that. Each commercial has to be played a certain amount of times. And all have to fit around the programming. I have an odd job that I sometimes pick up through a friend. I personally hand deliver emergency computer parts. I don't know jack about computers, but I guess sometimes servers or something go down and they need a very specific part very fast. So they call my boss and she calls around, and if the part happens to be near me, I jump in my car. She pays gas, round trip plane ticket. And it's a sliding scale depending on where I need to go. Sometimes it's Mexico. Sometimes it's another state. And lots of times it's China. Hardest part is convincing the Tsar that I need to carry it onto the plane. One that blows my mind a little bit. Because it's all very intricate. In a grocery store supermarket, you have all the products etc. Each store is mapped for length and number of aisles. Each product's measurements are taken and sorted and recorded so they put together a map of what product should be where. Which shelf aisle and even down to how many facings, number of products visible when brought to the front of the shelf, there should be. This is based on product shelf height, popularity, priority selling, product offers and all the other things you've never even thought of. They do this for every store. And change everything around every few months when products are discontinued, replaced, without ever actually seeing the physical store. Then there's the people who secretly go round with a map of where things should be, and if the products are incorrectly placed the store can be fined. I worked as an intern for a city's wastewater division, and I spent all day, every day, watching videos of the insides of sewer pipes and marking down defects in the pipes. Miles and miles of pipes, making for hours and hours of videos. It was a pretty shitty job, but I got to spend all day watching dirty videos. There are people paid full time to paint bridges. Take the Golden Gate, for example. By the time it is finished being painted, the other side needs to be painted again, and so these people are constantly moving side to side painting the damn thing. Bottle sniffer. My main service contract is at a huge robotic bottling plant that washes and refills 18L office cooler water bottles. Everyone gets smelled to make sure it has no funky odors or gasoline in it. You'd be amazed how often some asshole uses one as a jerry can. If that bottle slips past, the lab picks up trace amounts and you have to scrub the entire day's production. Only in the last 2 years has a lab on a chip machine come out that can detect stuff like this. It's improving and $100K. His job has not vanished yet but will one day. I have zero problems automating his job from existence. Some jobs are not fit for humans. You know, at least one of those bottles has been used as a trucker bomb. My uncle was a tobacco farmer in Middle America. At some point, the government stepped in and paid him more to not grow tobacco on his land than what he made growing it. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. A tobacco farmer that doesn't grow tobacco. I believe this went on for 20 or so years. And I believe they stopped paying him recently. I met a guy once who was a professional rectal exam model. Medical students use these models to learn how to rectal exams. He had lots of free time and apparently had a decent income. Met someone who was a lifeboat inspector. All year he takes cruises. Spends 2 of the 5 days inspecting all of the lifeboats and support mechanisms. Then has a good time the rest of it. I work for a luxury real estate auction house, and I work 5 weeks at a time in a new place around the world marketing those extreme luxury properties like personal islands in Fiji and the Bahamas to sprawling mega millions mansions in the Miami or LA. We bring the homes to auction at the end of the month and then I pack up and move on to the next assignment. All expenses paid. Pretty dang cool way to see the world and really get a good feel for the culture of different areas. They encourage us to be as socially active as possible. That's a lot of military jobs that most people wouldn't realize exist. For example, in the Marine Corps, there's a civilian employee called a Family Readiness Officer, FRO. They do a lot of different things in support of the families of service members, but are most known for handing the family readiness plans, which all Marines are required to have. They're basically an official contingency plan in the event that they are deployed, which are very important for families where both parents are military. So the continued care and education of their children is laid out in advance. It makes one less thing to worry about or plan last minute when orders to deploy come down. I work on large cruise ships and we have a guy whose job title is Lamp Man. Surprisingly, his job involves walking round and changing light bulbs. And yes, there is enough work to keep someone busy 365 days a year. There are people in Tokyo, Japan whose job it is to shove people inside trains during rush hour. No one ever knows exactly what I do, but once I explain how and what I do, they understand it's generally pretty needed in my field. I am a victim advocate for a county prosecutor's office. In a field where victims and their rights are generally overlooked, I advocate their rights and wishes in court cases, and help seek an outcome they are comfortable with. Meter painting. Great paying summer job. All I do is give natural gas meters a fresh coat of paint so the pipes don't rust, cause gas leaks. Extremely menial task but certainly important. Not an abnormal job, but not a lot of people think about it. I am a pediatric hospice nurse. So like older people have hospice when they have terminal illnesses. So do children. Like cancer, brain injuries, etc. I help them reach the other side comfortably and then move on to the next patient. The families need help sometimes afterwards, so I'll stay a few days but then go to the next child. Everyone smiles when they ask what I do and start off with pediatric. Then when I get to the hospice part they try not to cry. It is a mix of emotions. And it never gets easier. This will get buried. But when I was 15 or so I worked as an auxiliary bereavement worker at Duke Hospital in NC. Every day for 2 summers I would go to the rooms of patients who had either recently died or were about to die and console their families. Or them if they were alone. Then I would follow up with bereavement letters and consolation contacts with the survivors every 3 and 6 months. Over 2 years I'd say I watched about 150 people die. I recently learned that fire extinguishers fail at an alarming rate. One of the many reasons they do this is because the powder in them settles to the bottom of the container and cakes under the pressure. There exists a job where someone in a rotation goes around, releases the pressure and removes powder from fire extinguishers, fluffs the powder, and places it back inside under pressure. These people are called fluffers. Laughers. Yup. There are people planted in studio audiences that are paid to laugh weird or funny sounding because it gets the audience laughing more. Laughter is contagious. There are Heinz ketchup inspectors that go to restaurants and taste test the ketchup that's on the table if it's in a Heinz bottle. If it's not the right ketchup he tells the owners to remove the bottles. I'm on staff at a local church as the multimedia director. On top of my regular sound and lighting duties, I also get to occasionally remove helium balloons that children have released into the rafters. I keep a Red Ryder BB gun in my office. It's just powerful enough to pop the balloon without doing any damage to the ceiling. Definitely the best part of my job. At bars in China, and maybe elsewhere, 2. They employ women to sit and flirt with patrons as if they're, i.e. the women, simply patrons themselves. The patrons pay full price for drinks for the women and the bartenders don't put in any alcohol. Source. This is how my uncle met his wife. Now I have a half Chinese cousin. Last visit to Australia I bought a purse made of a tanned cane toad skin. You could put money in its mouth. Its rear exit had been sewn up so nothing fell out that end. I told my kids, if you don't pay attention in maths class, you might end up being a cane toad arsehole stitcher. Double quote. This tends to vary, but I found that a lot of people don't actually know what a nurse's aide is or what we do. In movies and on TV the work we do is so portrayed as just the nurse's responsibility, when in reality they tend to just do the more complicated stuff like hand out medications, change dressings, assessments, etc. All the grunt labor is done by the aides. Sleep professionals sleep so well they get paid to do so. Around 5k a month, it's really nice. Never tired, always refreshed, and I can enjoy the weekend with my associates. Not to mention paid vacation. Heck, I might as well be sleeping. Huh. Pig insemination. I had a guy apply for a temporary position with my company and that was his latest form of employment. TBH. He got a call back just because of that job and I had to ask him about it. Turned out to be a good guy. Hard-working country boy that worked out well. I would have kept him if the work lasted longer. I'm not sure if he went back to it after we let him go after the term of his employment. Cartographer. Most people don't even know what it is, and the people who do know what it is do not think the profession still exists. Repairing and retreading tires for commercial trucks. It amazes me how many people think all the tires on big rigs just get thrown out. Those tires are stupid expensive and it is much cheaper to retread and repair them than just buy new ones. I work as a relay operator for the deaf. Deaf people using a TTY contact us and tells us what number to contact, and then We read what they have to say to the person on the line and then type the reply from that person so the deaf person can read it on their TTY. We transcribe and relay just about any kind of call. Professional, personal or otherwise. You know all of those papers you have to sign when you go to get a loan? I used to take every single paper and scan it to our imaging system. Name it. Assign it to your loan number and then upload it to an online intranet archive so that everyone working in the bank could see and use the digital copy rather than the paper. Downside was that most of the people in the bank didn't know how to use the computer properly, so they came and asked me for the paper copy after checking to see that it had been uploaded. My aunt used to be a hairdresser for dead people. She was a regular hairdresser for a long time until she had to have spinal surgery and couldn't stand for any length of time. The local funeral home hired her and she would be given a picture of the deceased by their family and would style their hair accordingly. She loved the job and it paid well. No tips though. There are taste testers for everything that is in the grocery store. Yes. For that. And that. Mayonnaise? Yep. Pickled pig's feet? Yep. Hot sauce? Yep. There are also professional smokers who QA cigarette batches. They can not only verify that it tastes right but also tell what is missing if something wrong. You know that some shoes are laced? And you know that usually the laced shoes are laced in a crisscross pattern? And do you know these little plastic things at the end of shoelaces? I forgot about the job. Turkey jerker. No, it's not making jerky out of turkeys. No, it's not shaking cages and being a jerk. It's jerking off the male turkeys. If you don't, they get too aggressive and kill each other. Pays minimum wage and always lets you win an argument on who has the shittiest job. 0/10 would not recommend. Edit. Yes, they did provide gloves. People call me for the simplest stuff. Stubbed your toe? Threw up once? Feeling sick for 10 minutes and want to see a medical person right now instead of just seeing if it pans out? Your car transferred paint with another car and you think going to the hospital is your golden ticket to living in a mansion? Anxiety acting up? Knee pain at 3 AM. Call me. I'm the Uber of the medical world. Every now and then I may actually get someone needs the emergency part of emergency medical service. Paramedic for Major City 911. An old friend from high school, she was 2 years older I believe, plays music for struggling mental patients in the local hospital mental institute. I forget the name of the job but there's a whole degree for this music therapy. Respiratory therapist. We run ventilators. Draw and analyze blood gases. Give nebulized medication. Are in charge of airway and breathing during CPR. Transport intubated or non-invasively ventilated patients. Neonatal resuscitation during C-section or meconium births. Home care including vents. Oxygen and medication. We are also heavily involved in long-term acute care cleaning tracheostomies. Nasopharyngeal suction. Etc. Probably one of the busiest jobs in the hospital and no one knows we exist unless you've met us. I used to be an engineer on packaging machinery. We had one small machine in a company farm where it would seal the open end of 5 tubes in one hit, like toothpaste tubes. In these tubes was pig semen, used to artificially inseminate pigs. I got talking to the owner and asked the logical question, how do you get the semen out of the pig? He introduced me to a chap whose sole job in life was to wonk the pigs. Whenever I think life's dealt me a crap hand, I think about that bloke's hand and realize just how lucky I am not to be him. One of my jobs I still do part-time is working for various medical insurance companies handling accident work injuries. All I do is drive to a doctor's office to make sure the person is actually showing up and following the recommended treatment plan. I get paid at federal reimbursement per mile driven on top of my hourly rate. And I just sit in doctor's offices all day meeting with a doctor after someone's appointment, then I send a quick email update off and that is it. I make as much as I used to make as a full-time nurse for maybe about 10 hours a week. Which allows me to maintain a full-time job with a civil engineer firm doing municipal road inspections. Which is just as easy and also reimburses mileage at a higher rate. My car makes about 30k a year alone just on miles. I find both jobs a bit odd and incredibly pointless, but the money is really good. Marriage inspector. Some people do sham marriages so that one of them can get quick citizenship. To defeat this, immigration customs officials have to verify that it's a real marriage. Because there are so many citizenship applications, there are specialists that focus on just that part of the process, those applying on the basis of marriage. London still employs about a dozen people to light the last few remaining gas street lights. I get paid to scrape the gum from the bottom of the seats and chairs at all the McDonald's in the Boston area. When I get a 55-gallon drum full, I sell it to the Habitat for Humanity. I have no idea what they use it for and never asked. Friend of mine used to translate and sync subtitles for porn movies. Biggest problem is you have to watch every day. Every type of porn. Every type. At Walmart we have an entire division of secret police that shop the stores all day only looking for thieves, druggies, or any other potentially illegal activity. Third-party proposition players. It is illegal to gamble in California if the house is paying out wins or benefiting from the losers. So card rooms bring in TPPP, which are companies that provide all the money to cover the action on the tables. This company pays the house $1.20 or so per hand, and they pay out wins and collect all losers. Essentially you get paid to watch people play cards all day. It's a sit-down job. But you need to be good with mental math for the payouts. Usually starts at $15 per hour. Medical laboratory scientist. We're the people that run the tests on your blood, urine, etc. The great majority of people think that the doctors and nurses are the ones that do that. Requires a bachelor's degree and passing a certification exam that is comparable to a nurse's RN exam. And since no one knows we exist, the field is dying. The majority of people in the field will be retiring in the next 10 years and there aren't enough younger people to take over. Unless you're from the Midwest, you've probably never heard of data-sling. Farmers often want to make hybrids of certain breeds of corn. Or they want a certain breed that's more expensive than others. So what they'll do is plant blocks of female corn in between rows of male corn. Corn is self-pollinating. So the tassels that contain the pollen need to be removed from the female plants so that the male plants can pollinate them. It involves walking through the cornfield and pulling the tassels off of the plants before they are able to pollinate themselves so that the farmers can get the hybrid they want. It is often the first job Midwest kids have. And they can often start at 12 years old. I did it for 2 years. Starting when I was 12. I make snow. I work at a large ski resort and we create a base of snow on some of the more popular runs on the mountain and in some areas that would have worse conditions otherwise. There are snowmakers on the mountain 24/7. I work the grave shift so that's midnight to noon. We use snow guns with hoses of pressurized air and water connected to actually make the snow. We drive snowmobiles all over the mountain to check the quality of snow. Make sure we aren't burying the hoses or the snow gun itself. Make sure we aren't making too large of a pile and that the piles are where we want them. We usually end up having to dig out the water and air hydrants and the hoses and guns on a pretty regular basis. If I'm being honest, shoveling is probably about half of. It takes a special kind of person to do this job. Up on an icy slope, man-made snow is always a little icy, in the middle of the night. Soaking wet. If you're doing your job right you should be kind of soggy. Shoveling snow under the stars. Unless it's snowing. Then there's even more shoveling to do since we can't aim the nature snow where we want it. Anyway, if you need your driveway shoveled, I'm getting to be a pretty good shoveler. I'm a crisis actor. They bring me in for false flags and staged shootings. My family think I'm incredibly unlucky to keep getting caught up in violent incidents. No matter how many times I tell them that it's all staged and a complete setup, they never believe me. Still, it pays the bills. Ghost production. They produce music for straight up cash. Sign a non-disclosure so they can't ever tell people they created the song, and then the company or individual that bought the song can pretend they created it and release it themselves, crediting themselves as the actual producer of the song. Very common in the EDM and trance world. Many of the bigger EDM DJ are suspected of doing this. Professional white guy. In China, businesses hire Westerners as fake board members employees to make their company look more international and important at meetings, conferences and trade shows. The funny thing is, there aren't that many people who do this. And they all know each other, so many of these businesses are hiring fake white business people to impress other fake white business people who all know about the scam. I'm a recruiter for a huge logistics company. I screen applicants, run background checks and driving reports, book travel arrangements to get the drivers to our training facility, and take calls from drivers and try to sell them on the position. I just tell people I work in an office, because any 9-5 at a desk and computer is gonna be the same regardless of what exactly you're doing.